So in this segment, we're going to be discussing kind of the fake scandal around Rachel Reeves, something to do with expenses whilst in her former role, and stuff about her CV. So there's some sort of BBC investigation going on into Rachel Reeves' conduct when she was working in a bank. We know one of the scandals is she talked about being an economist there, but it turns out she wasn't. But this scandal, this idea that she kind of not just her, but it was other people who kind of messed around with the expenses list in terms of claiming things that they shouldn't have claimed or whatever. The main accusation being this: I think one ex-colleague told the BBC she nearly got sacked after an investigation into three senior managers accused of signing off each other's expenses. So what you do is you can claim for ridiculous things, and if each other person is signing it off, then it makes it look legit, and you can claim whatever, and you can claim you went through the proper channels, which she is doing. Because of the fact that it's signed off by someone else. But obviously, if everyone's dodgy there, it's not the real. It's not great, is it? That's why I'm struggling for words a little bit here. But if everyone is kind of dirty in this industry, then you can't make the argument you follow the rules, because obviously you guys rigged the rules in that sense. There's accusations of spending hundreds of pounds on handbags, perfume, earrings, and wine for colleagues, including one gift for her boss. And if her boss was involved in this, which I think is one of the allegations, then her boss could have bought her things and listed them off as expenses, and she could have done the same. Now, a whistleblower said there was also concern about her spending on taxis, and a Christmas party. In a Facebook group of former H-Boss employees seen by the BBC, several referred to Miss Reeves being investigated over expenses scandal. Now, I wonder if this is all coming out because she's the Chancellor now, and maybe some of these people, maybe they're jealous, or maybe they just want to take her down a peg or two. I don't know. Genuinely, it's not clear as to why this is coming out now, considering she's had a long career in politics. She's been around, I think, at least since 2010. So for this to come out now is very strange. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these kind of things. Like if there is any impropriety in her former work, it should be looked at. Is this a big scandal that deserves a proper BBC investigation? I don't think so. This is the real scandal here. And you got guys like O'Brien, you give him an easy layup. That's the problem with this. It just doesn't. If you had to explain this to someone, it's just going to look like she followed the rules. Was she a bit dodgy on company money? Probably. Does anyone really care that much? No.
What's the accusation? She bought a handbag. She bought a handbag on expenses. Did it get cleared on it? Yes. Well, of course it got cleared. Otherwise, we wouldn't know about it. How do you know she?
But the issue is that, like I said earlier, they're all signing off each other's expenses, and we don't know if they were even right to be able to claim these things. I don't understand how you can claim a handbag on company expenses unless you're like a model or work in advertisement, for example. It doesn't make sense.
She claimed for a handbag on expenses. Well, because how do you know she claimed for it? Did she hide it? Did she lie? No, obviously, if we wouldn't know she'd claimed for a handbag on expenses. So what's the story? Well, they're investigating, are they? Yeah. What happened with the investor? Nothing. Don't know. Nothing.
But this is a dumb argument, because we know MPs claimed lots on expenses, and even though they were legally right, they had the legal right to do so. There's big public backlash over this. Do I expect there to be public backlash over her using money from a private company to maybe buy herself and other people things that she may not have needed? I don't think so. But the problem is it's a very easy defense for Rachel Reeves, who is under fire here, and this is going to soak up a lot of time in the media, but also a lot of political capital, which doesn't need to be spent. We'll talk about the real scandals around Rachel Reeves and her role as Chancellor in a few minutes. But what they've done is given kind of Labour sycophants like James O'Brien here just an easy way to bat away criticism and just to spend hours and hours talking about this rather than talking about the more important stuff. This is the stuff Labour will be lapping up. Easy.
So did she get fired? No. Was she told off? No. Did she know she was being investigated about her purchases on expenses in the private sector long before she became a politician? Did anyone tell her she was being investigated? Well, apparently not, no.
Again, we don't know until some of that stuff's been made public. Clearly, there were investigations into it, and the fact that she nearly got sacked. I imagine if you work in a place where you need to get fired over this stuff, there will be a conversation around it. Maybe O'Brien didn't read this article. I don't know. I don't know about that. But you got Jane Waper, former HR business partner for HBOS, saying, "I do not recognise any of the accusations or claims that have been made against Rachel Reeves." So again, we don't know if she was involved or if she's genuinely telling the truth here, because if you've got someone who works in HR, they would be the ones dealing with this stuff. So is this a major story? No, I'll tell you about the major stories. Which is from George Monbiot.
Is it ever okay to put things on the CV that are not true?
So this is part of a separate allegation around her kind of lying on LinkedIn. I don't think it was her CV, it was LinkedIn.
Not okay, but actually this is a pretty trivial issue. I know it's going to be kicked around by the media because the media
and it's not
loves
the first time that it's had to be
gossip.
amended. That's...
No, exactly. Well, it's
and
still...
it is the...
And there it is there. Like, the media love this kind of gossip. That's what it's about. Like, the media want easy, salacious stories to talk about, and that's why a lot of the people in the media are washed, because they're not going to give you the actual stories or the analysis that you need. They look for the easy ones, because again, it's the media business, guys. That's the thing you got to remember. It's the media business. So what it means is they're looking for easy stories that they can just pump out constantly and talk about, so then they don't have to talk about the important stuff that might bore people, that might mean they switch off to a different channel, and therefore they don't get the advertising money. But he's right here. These two stories in combination, in my opinion, are not that important. If it was taxpayers' money, then you've got a point.
Chancellor, this is like the second most important person in the nation.
Fine. No, I accept all that, but actually it's a distraction from the pretty catastrophic situation in which we find ourselves. I think for the opposite of the reasons that Matt puts forward, we have a Chancellor and indeed a Prime Minister who now seem to have no vision at all except this thing called growth, GDP growth. Even the person who first formulated or formalised the concept, Simon Kuznets, said it should not be used as a measure of national welfare. And in some way, no, it's not okay, but in which we find ourselves, I think...
And he's right here. That GDP doesn't tell you much about how a country's doing. It tells you that, some people are making money, that the amount of money maybe in the pool is increasing, but that's why you look at things like GDP per capita. You look at GNI, price purchasing power. There's so many other metrics you're meant to look for. Someone for the channel actually did a video, I think, on it. I can't remember when. It was a long time ago. I think Georgia did a video on it about some of the metrics you can use to look at that kind of stuff, and maybe when the channel's in a stronger position, I'll try and revive something like that. But GDP is not, this idea of growth, all of this stuff. They want to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. It's just nonsense.
Vision at all except this thing called growth, GDP growth. Even the person who first formed, in some ways, there's a direct contradiction between GDP growth and our welfare and prosperity. And we can see this in exactly what Rachel Reeves is doing. She's putting the natural world into the mincing machine to try to turn it into numbers, to try to turn it into GDP growth. With the third runway at Heathrow, with her new trunk roads, with her horrible attack on regulators and regulation. This is our public protection. This regulation...
He's absolutely cooking here. Like, these are the things I've said on the channel before, attacking regulators, which are there to protect the consumer. Regulators, which need more power, by the way, guys, because of the fact that, Ofgem is not doing their job properly. The water regulator is not doing their job properly. There needs to be way stronger we need more regulation. We need stronger regulators, not less regulation and weaker regulators. It's farcical. If you want the economy to grow, if people are spending all of their money on their bloody energy bill, how are they supposed to have disposable income to spend on nonsense stuff so the economy can grow, or nonsense experiences so that the economy can grow? It doesn't make sense, does it? The way you get economic growth properly is through people having disposable income so they can buy things.
Is what defends people from the predations of capital, and she's saying let's sweep that away, and to make matters worse, turning on people who care about the living world, ultimately the most important thing of all, our life support systems, and abusing us. That is where the real problem lies. If we're talking about deceptions, the big deception is that GDP could be seen as a measure of our well-being.
Which is 100% true. Politicians have been pushing this for a while. We need to grow the economy. Liz Truss kept talking about growing the pie, etc. When it's not. The answer is about redistribution. That's one of the ways to grow the economy: redistribution and get people disposable income. One of these things these rich people don't understand is if people don't have any money, they can't buy your products, and if they can't buy your products, your company's valuation doesn't go up. I genuinely, it's baffling how stupid some rich people are in this country. So short-sighted. Here you've got a Labour MP trying to defend this nonsense regarding the expenses.
Defence from Labour cabinet colleagues is focused on the job she's doing now, which unsurprisingly they say she's doing very well at, rather than defending, I suppose, her past conduct or engaging in the details of this allegation, of this investigation. Partly that's because the Chancellor has admitted that there were mistakes on her CV, exaggerating the amount of time that she spent at the Bank of England, and a spokesperson for her said that that was due to an admin error.
That's nonsense. She talked about the best part of a decade. It's literally just it's jiu-jitsu. That's all it is, because she was there for about 5.5 years. So technically, you can argue that's the best part of a decade. Is it incredibly deceptive? Yes. Does it make you look really stupid when this stuff comes out? Yes. Typical politician.
By a member of her team on the second part of the investigation relating to the use of expenses at her next job at Halifax Bank of Scotland. Chancellor's team insists that she had no knowledge that she was under investigation, and that she insists that she always complied with the expenses rules and left the bank on good terms. It's important to note as well, Nick, that we haven't been able to establish the outcome of that investigation that she faced, nor that there was any conclusion of wrongdoing. But the Prime Minister...
Harry, I should say, and sorry to interrupt you, they're hardening their position up, because as it happens, I have just done a pre-recorded interview with the Minister, Peter Kyle, who said very vigorously, much more vigorously than was said yesterday, this isn't true, he said. There was not an expenses investigation.
So this is where, as a politician, you need to be careful, because if more stuff comes out about this, it's going to make a lot of Labour MPs look stupid. When you come up with definitive statements like this is one of the things that undid Boris Johnson, when he kept saying, there's no issue here, and then suddenly there was an issue there, and suddenly he knew all about it. So, I hope Rachel Reeves is being honest here, even though I would like to see her sacked as Chancellor, and to bring in someone who actually has a brain and understands economics rather than nonsense austerity, which she's been pushing for the best part of a decade now.
Into Rachel Reeves, and accused the BBC of misrepresenting that in its reporting of the story. So there's a much tougher defence of the Chancellor this morning.
So it's possible that the Chancellor and stuff and the Prime Minister are just going to wait this one out and just let this one pass, because again, it's all media cycles. Like, as long as the media has something to talk about, then one story passes into another. But if they don't have things to talk about, then this story's going to drag on, especially with the BBC investigating it for some reason. Because again, I don't see the major issue here. They should have really waited, I think, until they had definitive evidence. But again, sometimes these kind of stories, they're more damaging when it drags on for a while, because you get proven to be a liar. You say one thing, such as there was no issue, and then you find out there's an investigation. You're like, okay, she didn't know about it, and it would have cleared it, otherwise she'd been fired. And then if it's the case that she didn't leave on good terms, again, you look like a liar on two different counts. That's what makes these kind of things damaging. If you want to talk about real scandals, this is one. The government is letting NHS dentistry sink. Rachel Reeves' spending review will decide its fate. And again, this is a real issue, because private dentists charge a fortune for care. It's cheaper for people in this country, on God, it's cheaper for people in this country to fly abroad to get their dentistry done, which again, it can be quite dangerous depending on where you're going, especially when your dentist isn't going to be aware of any changes to your dental record. So that's going to be a very awkward conversation. But also, if you have any botched things done, a tooth being taken out, not done improperly, or not being filled in properly or whatever, it can cause you problems long term. Trust me, as a guy with really bad teeth, I can tell you, NHS dentistry is a real lifeline for people, because it costs a fortune if you don't have one. Michael Crick, I think he's a retired journalist now, talking about why are so many politicians so casual about getting facts right on their CVs. So again, it just doesn't make sense, and I think that they do it. Rachel Reeves, it was particularly egregious, because she talked about being an economist in different areas, Bank of England, and I think with HBOS as well, when it turned out she wasn't an economist there, and so she tried to use those credentials. This is where I have the issue: when you try and use bogus credentials in order to push your agenda of nonsense. Like, for example, if I said to you guys, I've got an economics degree, I've done, I studied economics at university, therefore I know about all of this stuff, when I've only just done a module. Like, that's what someone tried to argue with me with Femi, saying that he knows more about the single market than I do, because he did a module on EU law, and you're just like, bro, what the hell? So that's why you got to be careful with people and their credentials. But also, it's not just about having credentials, it's about what are they actually saying. What are they pushing, and what are their sources? Because you can have all the credentials in the world, and you can spout absolute nonsense. Whoops. And you talk about another scandal here. The jobs market is tightening up.
Okay. James Reed, you run Britain's largest recruitment company. You see the jobs data every month. What's it telling you right now?
Well, it's telling us that the market's getting more difficult. And it was telling us that back in August and September. And we shared that information. And this is the Office of Budget Responsibility we're hearing about. I'm disappointed that it's not until now that they've said, things are going to get worse, it seems, in this leak. So, I think that, the data we've been seeing has been a warning. It's been ringing a warning bell for several months.
Say it in plain
Right
English.
now, when it's down, jobs are down 34% in the first 10 days of February.
Job vacancies.
Job vacancies.
What does that tell you?
Well, I've not seen that since 2008. So that's telling me that
Financial rush.
the market is really tough, and that it's getting harder for people to find jobs, and that there are fewer companies recruiting. And last year, job vacancies went down 24%. So that was bad. But
we also had a period of record vacancies as well.
What's worrying me is it looks like it's getting worse. So this is a serious problem that the labour market is flagging up right now.
Why do you think that's happening?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, the number of vacancies was going to decline, and it did decline for a long period of time. But I don't think it's been helped by the budget. The national insurance increase in the budget certainly hit business hard. It's not confidence in business, and people have reined in and are not hiring as much as they used to be.
What's crazy about that decision to increase national insurance is one that, there's not enough of the Labour goons really talking about that. But the other thing is, it's been attacked by right-wingers and left-wingers. Like, I saw Yanis attack it. Yanis Varoufakis, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And also John McDonnell as well. You think they would back, effectively attacks on business. But they don't, because they know the impact it's going to have. It's going to have a jobs freeze, effectively. People are going to be let go because businesses won't be able to afford this kind of increase in contributions. And so I found that very interesting, like the people against it on the left. Rachel Reeves having to cut spending or raise taxes as UK growth disappoints. So this is on the back of the economy still not doing great. Rachel Reeves is in the red after the OBR downgraded its growth forecast to the Treasury last week. While bond markets moves to have stabilised, the growth downgrade is a big problem. And I've seen like Phil Morehouse do some video, some economic jiu-jitsu about how Labour can get out of it, and then he linked a source to the FT, which really didn't back what he was saying at all, really. So it's a bit weird, but the copium is quite strong with certain people, because the worst thing than not getting what you want is getting it, because Labour's plan on the economy is not good. Like, this is what I've been saying for a while here, and this is what George Monbiot is talking about as well. The plan of growth, it's just not happening.
As he said to you, growth and changing the planning system to get growth was his #1 priority. He said so over a year ago, before the election, and he ramped up the rhetoric earlier this year, where he said that he was taking on the blockers that might impede new housing developments, new infrastructure developments. So we are starting a series on Sky News, Sophie, to hold him to his word, see whether he can deliver that growth. The battle for growth will look in detail about whether the rhetoric can match up to the reality, which is why that we started with this structure known as the Bat Tunnel. It's in fact a shed, this 1 kilometre shed in Buckinghamshire. It's become the emblem of everything that is wrong with the planning system. Years in the making, £100 million cost, delaying projects, the high-speed rail project. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have said it won't happen again. But, Sophie, as we said in that film, there are doubts by planning lawyers, doubts by experts, by environmentalists, that simply saying that by the Prime Minister will be delivered. It's too hard, some of them believe. The laws that forced HS2 to build the Bat Tunnel are bound up in our trade deal with the EU. They're not sure...
What the hell's going on with this thing, then? I wasn't even aware of that. Why is HS2 being bound by our trade deal with the EU? That's nuts. It must be something to do with maybe EU rules around planning, if such rules exist. I think people did moan about, if there are bats in your attic or whatever, it does affect your some nonsense. So this is quite an interesting one. Okay, and with the planning permission, I'd rather see a system where it goes to court, and then if someone wants to appeal the decision, it goes to one more court, and that's it. Within about a year, it's dealt with. If one side says the application's been declined, you go to court within about 6 months. It gets heard, and then if one side wants to appeal it, cool, another 6 months, goes to another court, and bam, like specialist courts to deal with this stuff. It would actually clear it up a lot, I think.
Way compromise can happen. Government says wait and see. Well, that's exactly what we're doing. And can they deliver. This kind of scrutiny, I think, is going to increase on Keir Starmer because of the nature of his rhetoric and the boldness of his promises and the necessity of getting growth in order to generate tax dollars, tax money for public services. So we will see if he actually can deliver what he promised the British people.
It just very much feels like, like a Trump thing where they're going to blame the deep state. They're going to say we had all of these great plans to get growth and then that we were blocked by regulators. That's what it feels like. And if you vote us in again, then we'll get things sorted. I don't know. I'm just not buying it. And the final scandal is this lot, the gall of Labour MPs or MPs in general talking about people taking the mickey on benefits, because we'll be discussing that in a minute.
Look, a lot of people think too many people on benefits are pretending that...
A lot of people, can you show polling data to really show this?
...they can't work. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, if you speak to people here today, you will know that many of them have either just lost jobs that they desperately miss or really want to get back into work once they've got their health condition under control. So I think that there are many more people who want to work. I've no doubt, as there always have been, are people who shouldn't be on those benefits, who are taking the mickey.
The way the job system was designed over the Tories, you have to look for work. You have to show that you've spent a certain amount of hours looking for work. So if that system is not working, clearly there's a bigger issue here. And I think what's happened is people have been signed off, and they're trying to change the rules on who can be signed off for, medical reasons and things like that. They're trying to change, people say they have depression and have, I think, a note from the doctor. Labour are trying to change the rules on that. Physical ailments are obviously easier to see, much easier to see. But if you send someone who's got, a mental illness, a temporary one or a permanent one into work, and they have a breakdown, it's going to cost that business a fortune potentially. And it's going to be a lot more hassle than just letting them work through their issues. And if you actually fix mental health care in this country, Liz, it would be in a much better position.
And that is not good enough. We have to end that.
If you want to look at, who's taking the mickey here, there is no upper limit for how much MPs can claim to cover heating costs. MPs can claim up to £3,400 towards their heating costs claim. Full fact, there is no upper limit to how much MPs can claim for utilities. They can claim all sorts of nonsense, right, in terms of expenses. And they accuse the public and people being on benefits, which isn't a lot of money. It's a lot less than our European peers, when you look at incomes and things like that and cost of living. Our welfare benefits are actually a lot lower than other kind of developed countries. And so you want to talk about people taking the mickey power, it's you. It's 100% issue. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The real scandals around Rachel Reeves is their inability to actually understand the economy, in my opinion, and how to actually grow it in terms of, for the benefit of the British public rather than numbers on an Excel sheet or whatever thing they use to generate all the numbers. But anyways, I'll leave it there. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.